Hi and welcome to October 2019 Patreon video. So this week was one heck of a week. I've had a lot of overtime. The assignments at work have been insane. The people whose feedback I have the people who I'm coaching over on Patreon. If you don't know, there's a coaching tier on Patreon where I help you reach your goals, your drawing goals. And one of the things that happens is that the people who I'm coaching, they tend to send me their work, and then I talk about it and give them pointers and things like that via video. And I haven't been able to record any of those feedback videos because the workload has been so crazy that all the time that I've actually got to do anything is basically taken up doing overtime and doing work. And that was just this week. Okay, so I just wanted to show you some of the artwork that I've got here for my sketchbook and show you and tell you a little bit about it and why I'm doing what I'm doing. So last month my wife and I had an anniversary trip and went to Santa Barbara. So one of the things that we did while we were having lunch in a place, I sat down and I drew the view from the window of the table that we were at. In part because I know that when I do something like that, I'm going to remember the circumstances behind the sketch. And sure enough, when I look at this sketch, I really can remember where I was, and I remember the atmosphere of the place, the type of conversations we were having, the time of day, all that stuff. It's actually really. If I highly recommend, if you can draw and you can sketch, and you really want to remember a place or a circumstance, sketch what's going on around you. Look around and sketch something, and that whole moment, it's almost frozen in your mind because you're drawing and you're doing something. It's really a very strange thing, but I can remember this moment because of this sketch here of this fountain from the view from the restaurant. So these sketches here are me kind of working out noses. If you notice here, there's just like I'm drawing these shapes for noses, and that's what these things are about. I have this. I don't know. I'm not 100% happy with the way I'm currently drawing noses, and I wanted to play around with a different approach, and so I decided, and that's what sketchbooks are about. You're just playing around with ideas and concepts, and just looking at other artists and the way they do it, and deciding whether or not any of what they do is something worth stealing, borrowing, doing what they do. And at the end of the day, I sort of have borrowed some ideas, but again, just because you're taking it from somebody doesn't mean it fits with what you want. So it starts to morph when you're doing it. You're like, okay, well, that's okay for them, but it's not quite what I feel like I want to do. And then you just start morphing it from that point. So that's what sketching is about, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm morphing these ideas. So let me move over here. So this is me again, and I think I had kind of found what I was looking for, sort of. And so I started using one of the characters from my comic to see if this is a direction that I want to take this nose drawing. Here is a drawing, and it didn't come out the way I wanted, so this was like a fail. And here is a sketch that I was doing the next day or a couple of days later, and this is a trip that my family and I took on a weekend. We took the metro. We all got into the metro and we all went to Pasadena. And we spent the day in Pasadena just wandering around. We went to Blick's art store. And near the end of the day, we all sat down in One Colorado Plaza. And there were some singers and a band playing. And so I sat down and I drew what I was seeing. I drew the band singing. And I actually looked up and I saw Ron Perlman. I'm like, hey, that's Ron Perlman. It was really funny to just kind of like just be somewhere and then just see an actor just kind of hanging out in the same place you are. And I'm like, okay, that's pretty cool. So I drew the back of Ron Perlman. And here's a drawing of my wife sitting across from me at the table. So we all had a good time, and it's again another memory that I could recall all the circumstances because I drew this little moment. More nose design, drawing, construction. Like I'm inventing the construction for myself. Like if I do this, how do I? What's it look like if I'm done? What's it look like in 3 dimensions? It shouldn't just be a line. The lines need to represent something for me. A lot of artists don't do that. They just kind of draw a line and then that's it. But for me, I need to try to wrap my head around what it actually means so that it has some kind of... really what it is I'm trying to wrap my head around it so that I could paint it. Because when you have to paint something, you have to paint its structure, its form. You have to describe what it is. And if I don't figure that out, I can't paint it, I can't color it, I can't add any values to it. And so here I am trying to figure out what that line represents and where it is in the nose structure. So I'm inventing these structures for myself to just try to wrap my head around how to draw these noses. Okay, so I think I kind of solved what I want to do with the noses, and I was happy with it. And so I finally started drawing a Patreon reward illustration. And again, if you don't know what that is, once you hit a certain threshold, a certain contribution of patronage, I send you an illustration, a hand-drawn traditional illustration. And I haven't actually sent out any because I haven't done any because I haven't been very happy with I just don't know what my illustrations ought to look like. So I spent the last 2 months discovering what I wanted to do. And I decided what it was, and then I decided to do a drawing. And the very first thing I wanted to do was sketch it out digitally. And I hated it. I just did not like the way it turned out. I didn't like where it was going. I didn't like the drawing. It just wasn't what I wanted, even though I thought it was what I wanted. I don't have any copies or anything of that illustration. The silver patrons are going to get the file, and they're going to see that illustration. They could open it up. They can look at it, whatever. So silver patrons know what I'm talking about. But I'm not sharing it here in this video, nor with bronze patrons. It's not a drawing that I'm happy with. It was just, in a lot of ways, it's kind of like this month's postcard, and then I will talk about this month's postcard and explain why I say what I'm saying. But anyway, and this kind of sent me back to the drawing board. What is it that I want to draw? Why do I want to draw it? Etc. And it occurred to me that one of the things that I really wanted to do was something along the lines. I mean, when I think about what makes me excited when it comes to drawing and illustration, and when I look at something, I go, "That is so awesome! I want to do that," or "I want to hang that up on my wall," or whatever it is. It's always something along the lines of something that Frank Frazetta does. And if you don't know who Frank Frazetta is, I just recently recorded a video of Frank Frazetta, and as of the time of this recording, as to the publishing of this video, I don't think it's been made public on YouTube, but it will be. If you look in a week or two, it'll be on my channel. I talk about Frank Frazetta. But in general, it's a type of illustration where it's very action based, and often there's Conan is in it, and Conan the Barbarian, and it's very exciting, full of energy, and it's fantastical in nature. It's kind of a swords and sorcery, very powerful art. And so I decided that I wanted to do something like that, but in my own way, with my own voice, doing my own thing. So I didn't want to copy Frazetta, but I wanted to be inspired by Frazetta, as so many people are. And one of the many ideas that I've come up with over the years was this story about a Conan type character. But this Conan type character is a barbarian that is modern day. So it's urban swords and sorcery. So there's a story on my blog that I started writing and creating, and I created it publicly on my blog. And the character is trying to have a meal when 3 sorcerers come and start bullying him because they assume that he's done something that the barbarian says he didn't do. And then a fight breaks out, and this all happens in Pasadena. Like I said, you could go to my blog and see the whole thing online and the making of, and I was going to make it a kind of a semi-animated thing where it was going to be moving ish. It wasn't going to be fully animated. It was just going to it's going to be more like an animatic. And I didn't finish it. I never finished it. But I decided that I wanted to take that concept and do illustrations of that character, of that concept. But because I've started moving away from drawing guys, and the main character in my story was a guy, I decided that I needed to redesign the character as a female, but I didn't want to do Red Sonja, because I don't think Red Sonja has the same flavor as Conan, and I wanted to do that. So I decided to redesign the character. His name was Rob. But now I don't know what this new character's name is. Maybe her name will be Rob too, except for Robin. I don't know. I'll think about it. But I needed to redesign the character, and so here are the preliminary sketches of me trying to design the urban barbarian as female, while still kind of sticking to some of the designs that I originally had for the original character. And the original character has this gigantic hammer and a pet albino raven. So those two elements are going to still be the same, except now she's female. And my original design, Rob was a brown-skinned guy. I think I was thinking he was going to be Latino. And so this character is going to be brown-skinned in some way, either because she's African-American, she's Latino, or Afro-Latina. So these are preliminary sketches, trying to find out what the outfit was going to be, trying to design the face, and that to me ended up being the most difficult. And at the same time, I'm implementing this nose construction, nose design that I've been working on. And here's another design of the face and the head. And I know for a fact that I'm going to have one side shaved while the other side is not shaved. I originally thought that maybe she could have a nose ring, but then I decided against it because I don't want anybody who's fighting her to grab the nose ring and pull it off. I mean, that would be like the very first thing you'd kind of want to do, is to hurt somebody, so she wouldn't be wearing a nose ring for that reason. Two different types of pants, one that goes all the way up to the top over the belly button, while another one goes around the waist showing the abs. And I thought that overall, one of the things that I really wanted to do, it was draw muscles. So I needed to have her wear just enough clothes so that I could show her arms and show her abs. You know, like that's really, and you know, her neck and all these. I wanted to be able to draw all that stuff. And I also didn't want her to have lost all the body fat in her thighs, so that she was just kind of too straight. So I over exaggerated the hips, and here is me. Here I am exploring more of the face, and these weren't quite working. Here is actually a really quick little doodle of one of the villains. If I was to redesign the villains as all female, what would the main villain have looked like? And this was just a really quick scribble. But here in these is where I started playing around with the proportions of the face, so I could decide what I wanted the barbarian's face to look like. And so a lot of playing around with proportions, wider noses, smaller noses, wider eyes fall apart, slants of the eyes, bigger eyes, smaller eyes, bigger mouths, smaller mouths, how far the mouth is, how big the mouth, like all these things. Just kind of trying to figure it out. None of these were inspiring. None of these I liked when I was done doing all these scribbles. Eventually, I looked at real women as you kind of have to do eventually, like what real, because like up until this point I was just drawing out of my imagination, just drawing heads, and what ends up happening is that you just keep iterating the same thing over and over. You just keep doing the same thing that you always do no matter what, and doing that is it's kind of a bit of a disaster, because it's like, it's almost like incest, where it's the same thing over and over, and it stifles growth. So I went online and I looked at different women's faces. Eventually I ended up looking, I'm like, what women do I think are pretty and ethnic, and what makes them look so unique, and is there anything I could capture? So I was looking at tons of photos of women's faces, and eventually came up to Beyonce. And I was like, what if I was just to try to draw Beyonce? So I drew her, and I ended up not actually drawing Beyonce. What I started drawing was, I looked at Beyonce's face and I said, what makes it unique? And then I took some elements of it and then started iterating from that point. And so the very, very first sketch I did was this. And one of the things that looking at that photo of Beyonce did was, it took me out of this box head shape. All this time I was doing this box head shape. And with Beyonce, her face is kind of round. And one of the things about her face is that her cheekbones are so high, it makes a different head shape. So the moment I changed the head shape to this, and then I started kind of doing what I had been doing before with the faces and the thing, it was like, oh, now I've got something that is unique, exotic, and it feels different than what I've been doing all this time. So I ended up doing, this is actually the design of the face that I'm going to go with. And here I was trying to do this side of the face. And as you can see, this is a Post-it. So there's another drawing underneath it where I drew it in purple, and then I drew a green drawing to try to solidify the drawing, and it was such a big mess I couldn't see what I was doing. So I put a Post-it on it and I redrew it again, making very mild, very subtle adjustments. And this is what came out. And then I still kind of messed up, and I thought that there was something about how much forehead there was here, and I was losing that forehead. So I thought that maybe if I gave her more forehead. So things like that, like there's a lot of experimentation and a lot of design and a lot of like trying to discover things. And even here I'm trying to like figure out the skull behind this kind of face. So, but at least I got something that I'm happy with, and I think I'm going to be going, so it's this face with this body. So that was what's going on here in the sketchbook. So that was half of what was happening last month. I was trying to make this character so that I could use that character for illustrations that would be very dynamic and full of excitement and kind of like fighting illustrations in the same kind of vein as Frazetta, but in my own way, in my own take on that sort of thing. And it'll take place in an urban setting rather than a fantastic setting. And hopefully that idea is going to stick. That's what I'm hoping. And let me show you what I did for the postcard for this month. So this is this month's postcard. Here it is. And again, muscles is kind of like the theme. And this postcard is very similar to what I was going to actually do an illustration, that illustration that I abandoned, that I started digitally. So I started that illustration digitally so that I could figure out what I wanted to do, then transfer the illustration onto actual paper, and then finish it all on paper. Fortunately, I didn't get that far. I discovered I didn't want to do it in the digital stage, so it saved me a lot of time. The illustration was similar to this. It was a lady holding a dumbbell, and the only thing that would have been in color and value would have been her skin, and then the rest of her was going to be like this, where it just kind of, the clothes and the background and the hair kind of all blended together, and it was a bunch of lost edges. But there was something about that drawing that I didn't like. However, that concept wasn't a horrible concept, and I decided to do the postcard like this because I still like the concept. So the idea behind this postcard, as you can see here, is that I kept it. So this postcard has a lot of different things going on. I drew the original sketch in color erase colored pencil. So I drew the whole thing, and then I went in and I kind of mapped out where I was going to put all the values and the tones with a ballpoint pen, an orange ballpoint pen ink. Then I did a wash with watercolor, and then I went in with a darker values and then of watercolor, and I worked out all the forms. I painted it all, and then I went in with a ballpoint pen and I refined all the edges. I added more. I added line work, things like that. And somewhere around the way, by the way, before I did the wash, I outlined the entire thing with a micron pen. And so it's a big combination of ballpoint pen. Oh, and the white is a white gel pen that I have, that I bought in Pasadena at the Blix Art Store. And all the black is a flat brush and a thin brush, both. I just dipped it in ink, and just with a flat brush, I just did all the black with, and so you can see the brush strokes. I didn't want to make it look clean and perfect. I wanted to keep the traditional, flavor of it. I wanted to show that it was in the imperfections of the medium, the black, the brush strokes are visible. I wanted to show that the ink didn't quite cover everything perfectly, that there's some elements of the blacks, that there's a slight lightness in the darkness, in the jet blackness. So, and I also didn't want to cover up the wash. I wanted to show that there was a wash under all this stuff at the same time. So the wash is, I was really sloppy with it, and I just washed the whole page. So some of it is bleeding through the black ink. I wanted that feel of imperfection. I wanted you to be able to see the lines in it. That was what I was going for, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. It looks really graphic and looks really rough, and at the same time it says what I wanted to say, and it was a really fun project to do, especially because I was so stressed out doing it. It took me all week to do during my lunch break. I only had like 20 minutes to work on this at a time. It really helped to unwind during lunch, especially at such a crazy week that I was having, a very stressful week. And I'd like to say that this postcard, I give away the postcards to a patron every month. So the winner of this month's postcard is Craig K. Craig, you win this month's postcard. Congratulations. If you want to join in on the fun and you want to get a chance to win these postcards that I give away to our patrons, to one of my patrons, you could sign up at any level on my Patreon. And at this, also, as long as you're my patron, you'll get a high-res digital copy of the postcard. And finally, the other thing that I've been working on is my comic, as you know, and it's taking me forever to color this comic. I finally managed this month to color the very first page. It's only a single panel, and it took forever to color this thing. I really need to figure out a faster way to color the comics so that it doesn't take so long. So this is the first page. And this is the second page, work in progress. It's work in progress because the last thing, right now I've got everything colored the way I want except for one thing, and that is the backgrounds inside these doors still need to be painted. Otherwise, this is the colors that I'm going to be using. It took me so long. I mean, it took so long to figure out what this place was supposed to be, what colors I wanted in this place, and what textures I wanted on this place. You'll see in the making of videos that I do that I've had to stop a few times to put to add colors to my characters, like figure out what their personal colors are going to be, so that when I color them in the comic, I could just pick the colors. Well, with the background, I had zero idea what this background was supposed to look like. Like zero. I had no idea. So the entire time that I was coloring this for the entire month, I was trying to figure out what to do with this background. And I would spend hours just, is this color? Is it this color? Is it this color? Is this color? Is this texture working? How about this texture? Is this texture working? No. How about this? Should I put this symbol in with this symbol? How about if I'm looking online, looking at things and looking at, oh my gosh, it just took forever. But now, hopefully, now that I know what this place is supposed to look like, what the colors are supposed to look like, then the rest of it is going to go faster. But, oh man, did it take forever to figure out what this place is supposed to actually look like, what colors I'm supposed to use, what the value. I'm just glad that I at least got this far, and that I'm going to finish the background. The moment I finish the background, it's just going to be such a relief, because it means like I'm done with like the hardest part, And now hopefully the rest of it will be just sampling from this page for the rest of it. So here's hoping that it's going to be that simple. And that is it. That is the story behind all the Patreon rewards. I'm hoping that I'm going to be done with the comic by the end of the... Wait a minute. What day? I don't think I'm going to be done. But hopefully before the end of the year, I'll be done coloring that darn comic. It's just... It shouldn't be taking me this long. It's just dry. Oh my gosh. I just want to get done so I can just keep moving on to the next part of the story. Okay, so thanks a lot for watching. Thank you for your support. And I hope you liked the rewards. And I will talk to you next time. All right, bye.